When I was a child, my father often said the same phrase, looking towards the woods behind our house. In these woods, everyone has their own truth, but not everyone tells it alive. I didn't understand then. I thought he was just drunk or wanted to scare me before going to bed. We lived in the wilderness, and my father was the kind of man who didn't trust cities, didn't like visitors, and preferred fishing at dawn than socializing with anyone. Mom left us when I was 8. I just didn't come home from work one day. I never found out if she left on her own or if something happened. My father was silent. Over time, I learned not to ask unnecessary questions. It's been many years. I left. I tried to forget that life. The city drew me in with its rhythm, work, a rented apartment, constant repairs in the kitchen, and empty conversations on the landing. But there was always something itchy inside. An unanswered question. When my father died, suddenly, from a stroke, I felt almost nothing. Just a quiet, sticky feeling, as if something was left unfinished. When his old friend Jim called me and told me that my father had left me a legacy of land and a hunting cabin in the north, the one that stood in the depths of the forest behind our house, I realized that I had to return there. Just to see. Just close this gestalt. I left in the morning. It was the beginning of autumn. The leaves were still hanging on the branches, but the air already smelled of rot and moisture. The old road leading to the site is almost overgrown. The GPS lost its signal after 40 miles, and I drove from memory, guided by a charred tree by the side of the road and a turn by a dried-up stream. By the time I got there, the sun was already starting to sink behind the hills. The hut stood there as if no one had touched it for decades. The roof had caved in a bit in one corner, but the walls were solid. I got out of the car, took my backpack and a flashlight and went to the door. It wasn't locked. She just pushed inside with a long, raspy groan. It smelled of wood, mold, and something else, faint but familiar. Either with old meat, or with a musty cloth. There was a dusty box on the table. Inside is a notebook, hunting cartridges, a knife with rust on the blade, and a stack of photographs wrapped with an elastic band. The first picture is of my father. Young, smiling. Next to him is some unknown guy with long hair. They are holding guns and standing against the background of that very hut. On the back, was written in black ink, October 8th. The last hunt with Tom. Don't repeat it. It took me a moment to understand what was meant. Maybe it's some kind of story, maybe a joke. But the very phrase jarred on my nerves. I put the photo back and began to disassemble the hut. The door to the basement was closed with a heavy iron beam. With an effort, I pushed it off and opened the lid. The smell hit me like a slap in the face. Dampness, earth, and something very old that should have disappeared long ago. I went down, clutching my sleeve to my nose. There were old crates, hunting gear, a couple of metal cages, and chains. Rusty, with locks. Heavy ones. Fixed directly in the concrete floor. I shuddered. What the hell was he doing here? I went upstairs, quickly, as if something was chasing me. I sat on the porch and smoked 2 cigarettes in a row, even though I quit a year ago. The forest was quiet. It's too quiet. I stayed the night. I put a sleeping bag on, lit an old stove. The smell is gone, or I just got used to it. But I didn't sleep well. It always seemed to me that someone was walking behind the walls. Not an animal, but steps. Weighty, slow, human. In the morning, I decided to comb through everything. First the cabin, then the surrounding area. There was a path behind the house that went deep into the forest. I walked along it, measuring my steps. After a couple 100 meters, I saw another building. A small shed. Almost destroyed. I peered inside cautiously. Dice. Not animal, but human. They were roughly thrown into a corner, covered with tendons and remnants of clothing. Next to it is an empty whiskey bottle and a rusty axe. And again, there's a note on the wall, nailed with a knife. If you're reading this, don't try to understand. Just leave. He made his choice. Who? Who made the choice? My father? I rushed out of the barn, my heart pounding in my throat. Everything inside turned upside down. I wanted to run. Get in the car and drive away. But I couldn't. I had to find out what he had done. Who was he chaining? Who was in the photos? What the hell was going on in this place? I returned to the hut. And then I noticed that there was something under the layer of boards near the fireplace. I tore off 3 rotten boards. A tin box. Castle. I smashed it with a rock. Inside is a diary. The pages were yellowed and the ink was blurry, but I read it. What my father wrote did not fit into my head. Not because it was mystical. Because it was the truth. The dirty, scary, human truth that he had been carrying around for decades. Because it was the truth. The dirty, scary, human truth that he had been carrying around for decades. I was sitting on the floor by the fireplace, with a diary in my hands. The flame in the stove crackled softly, casting shadows on the walls, and this made the room seem alive. But not cozy. Rather, it was as if the hut was watching me, assessing what I would do next. The notes were uneven. Sometimes he wrote quickly, as if someone was urging him on. Sometimes, carefully, almost sterile. It all started innocuously, describing hunts, tracking tracks, talking to Jim. Then came the names. Strangers. He wrote about the people who came here with him. Sometimes to go fishing, sometimes just to relax. But almost all of them disappeared. He didn't even hide it, he just wrote, Tom couldn't stand it. I had to finish. John knew too much. I buried it deeper. I read it and didn't believe it. At first I thought it was senile nonsense against the background of loneliness. But then I saw the map, a homemade one, on the last page. It led to the places in the forest where there were crosses. Not drawn. Described. The first one is by an old pine tree, the second one is behind a fallen oak tree, and the third one is in a ravine. Everything inside me shuddered. He didn't just do it, he wrote it down. Systematized it. I couldn't stay. But he couldn't leave without checking, either. I went. He took a shovel that stood against the wall, a lantern, and followed the route. The first point is an old pine tree. I searched for a long time until I found a place where the earth was a couple of tones darker and denser. I started digging. At a depth of slightly less than an elbow, I caught something metallic. Another tin box. Inside is a woman's chain, broken glasses, and a small Walkman. There was a sticker on the player, Lucy. I didn't know who Lucy was. But something jumped inside. I found the flat batteries in the hut and put them in. He turned on. And there was a voice. Quiet, scared. Female. She was saying something unintelligible, as if she knew that no one else would hear her. And then a scream. One short one, as if someone had gagged her. The player has turned off. I almost dropped it into the leaves. I went to the second point. This time it's the remains. They were almost completely decayed, but the clothes were modern. And again, a tin box. This time, an old cell phone, a bunch of keys, and another note. He said that no one would be looking for us. I didn't believe it at first. But now it doesn't matter. I just pray that he dies first. I buried everything back. Gradually. It was getting worse with every move. It wasn't just my father. He was a man who had his own ritual. Not mystical. Very, very real. Cold, calculating. He knew who to bring. He chose. He was watching. And he didn't feel a single bit of regret. When I returned to the hut, I was shaking. I didn't eat or drink, I just sat against the wall, looking at the bourgeoisie. She was smoking. I could feel one thing throbbing in my head, you're his son. You're from his blood. I wanted to scream, but the sound stuck in my throat. Everything I knew about my family turned out to be a lie. Mom may have left for a reason. Maybe she understood something. Maybe she wasn't allowed to leave. The next morning, I got ready to leave. I threw a diary, photos, notes, even a tin box with things in the trunk. I wanted to turn it all over to the police. Let them figure it out. Let them dig. Let them find everyone. But before I left, I found an old letter in the mailbox. No stamp, no return address. My name was written on it. By hand. There's a photo inside. Taken quite recently. Too recently. In it, I'm standing by the car, against the background of the forest. The photo was taken from the side of the hut. And on the back is my father's handwriting again. Your turn. You have to finish. I threw up right on the porch. I went through the house in a panic, found an old camera hidden under a canopy. It was turned on. She painted me. All this time. I turned on the car and drove off. At the limit. I didn't look back. But even after 100 miles, I didn't feel any relief. Because that story was in me now. I didn't know if I was being followed. I didn't know who else had read that diary. I didn't know who else he was calling to the forest. And the scariest thing is that I started to wonder. What if I'm his son after all? If there's even a drop of someone in me who wrote down names, buried bodies, and didn't feel anything? Now I'm sitting in my apartment. The windows are boarded up. I hear a noise outside the door. I know he's dead. But someone keeps going. And, perhaps, the diary did not come to me by chance. Or maybe it's true, not by chance. I haven't slept in 3 days. I just sat there. I didn't eat, I didn't drink, I didn't move. The same question was buzzing in my head, what now? I thought I had escaped. That it was all left there in the forest. In the damp earth. But as soon as I returned, everything continued, as if I had just carried it with me. It wasn't left in that cabin. It stuck to me like the smell of rot-on clothes, which I couldn't get rid of. I took everything I found to the police. Silently. Without details. A diary, a cassette, a Walkman, notes, a photo. He said he found it in an old house. They looked at me with restraint, with cold interest. They asked me to sign the protocol. I signed it. They said, if anything, we'll call you back. And they didn't call back. I was hoping that was it. That I passed the damn baton, and now others will do it. But 3 days later, I found a note in the doorway. A simple one, without an envelope. We know what you've read. It's not my father's handwriting. It wasn't his style at all. It was fast, hasty, and angular. And on the back is the address. As if someone wanted me to come. I wasn't going to. I burned the paper, turned off the phone, filled the mailbox with mounting foam, and reinstalled the doors. And then, at night, when I was sitting in the kitchen and drinking from a bottle, a light blinked outside the window. Once. One short pulse. Like a camera flash. I ran out into the darkness, but there was no one there. No tracks, no cars, no people. Just the smell of burnt matches. I've smelled it before. In the forest. In that pit. Near the player. In the morning, I went to the address that was on the piece of paper. Not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't not go. The house number is in the suburbs. Old, abandoned. With a broken porch and ingrown windows. There is emptiness inside. Just a stool, and on it is another diary. This one is no longer my father's. It was written by another person. A woman. I recognized the handwriting, it's Lucy. The one whose voice was playing in the player. She led everything too. My days. My thoughts. And she knew where she was, too. The pages were torn out, crumpled, and many were written nervously and with mistakes. But one record was clear. If you're reading this, it means you're one of them. Or you'll become one. We are not randomly chosen. We are not just being killed. They check on us first. Out of fear. For a reaction. For sympathy. They are not looking for resistance. They need those who are able to continue. If you didn't run away, congratulations. You've passed the first stage. My throat is dry. I didn't know if it was a bluff. It's a scary trick. Or the system. I began to remember my childhood. Father's behavior. His habits. How he invited my friends over and told them they needed to be quieter. The way he looked at them when he thought I couldn't see. I remembered how he once brought home a box with a lock. And he told me, if you ever open up, know that I respected you. Then I laughed. Now I wanted to turn myself inside out. System. Check. Selection. I went outside. There was a car parked right at the gate. The old one. The engine was humming. There's a man driving. He didn't come out. I was just watching. There was no signal. Didn't fit. He left a minute later. All I remember are the empty eyes. Tired. As if it wasn't the first time he had done this. I understood, it won't end until I break the chain. I returned home, opened my laptop, started writing. That's it. From beginning to end. With names, dates, and descriptions. All the notes, all the details, everything I found. I posted it online. Anonymously. To dozens of forums. And 2 days later, I received a message. Without text. Just a photo. My apartment. Filmed at night. From the street. The curtains were open. I didn't remember leaving them open. I closed the laptop. I took my suitcase out of the closet. I couldn't stay. I had to go. But where to? Without a difference. The main thing is to stay away. I took out the cash, turned off all my devices, left my phone in the supermarket parking lot, got into my old car and just drove off. Without a card. Without a navigator. Without a route. Just deep down. Where no one will ask who you are. Where no one is looking out the windows at night. But even on the highway, when there were no lights or cars, I still felt that someone was following me. Not physically. Deeper. It's like they've implanted a memory inside me that's not mine. Someone else's fault. Other people's words. And most importantly, someone else's mission, which cannot be abandoned. I didn't ask her to. I inherited it. The way a family name is inherited, time passed, and that worried me the most. I didn't know where I was. All the roads merged into one, the turns became somehow the same, the houses were blurred spots. Everything around him turned into a monotonous picture, from which he could not distract himself. The inner voice was not silent. He said it wasn't over. He kept telling me that I needed to keep going. And it wasn't just a feeling, not a fear. It was a clear instruction, like a command that cannot be disobeyed. I was looking for a place to hide. But at some point I realized that no matter where I was, they would find me anyway. I don't know how, I don't know why, but they're watching. They can see everything I've done. I couldn't run away from it. All I felt was the constant pressure. That burning fear when it seems to you that your next step is the last one, and you have to do it exactly, otherwise it will be too late. When I stopped to catch my breath, I noticed something strange. In the distance, among the trees, I saw something that would have been impossible to ignore. It was another hut. I knew I couldn't go there. I should have passed by. I took one step back, and immediately it became clear to me that I had already been noticed. That's the man. The same driver who saw me earlier. He stood at the door of this hut, motionless, watching. There was something familiar in his eyes. Fear. Doubt. But at the same time, determination. It was the same determination that I felt in myself. I realized that I wasn't the first. And certainly not the last. I got back in the car and drove on, but I couldn't rest anymore. I couldn't figure out what was going on. Why did it affect me so much? Why couldn't I forget? And most importantly, what should I do about it when I didn't seem to have a choice? I was getting colder with every kilometer. Not because I was in the forest, but because I knew that this chain would not end. All these people, these victims, all this that I have seen is not an accident. It was part of something much bigger. It's part of a chain that keeps growing. And I was one of the links. Every new face, every new place, every new footprint, it was all part of the game. I could only hope that at some point I would be on the right side. But what if I've been trapped for a long time and can't get out? If you've watched it to the end, you're one of the few who made it to the finals. Did you feel the cold tightening in your throat when he opened that door? Did you hear the silence behind the trees that seemed to hide something? Now think about it. What would have happened if he hadn't turned into the forest for the first time? Why did that hut reappear in another place? It couldn't be the same one, could it? Who was that driver on the doorstep? And why was there fear in his eyes instead of anger? He chose to go into the forest. What would you do? Write in the comments what you think really happened. Would you go into that cabin? Or would he have gone on as if nothing had happened? And don't forget, it was reality, not a horror story. Sometimes the real danger is not ghosts, but people.